At his father's funeral, Martin Royce inherited two things: a billion-dollar empire, and a sealed letter confessing to a life-destroying crime. Now he has 30 days to choose: stay rich and stay silent, or lose everything to save a stranger's name. What would you choose? The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. It soaked the marble angels at St. Agnes Cemetery and left the mourners damp and shivering, though no one dared complain. Not today. Not at the funeral of Walter Briggs. He had been a titan. Oil, land, shipping, everything he touched, he bent to his will. And now he lay still, encased in polished mahogany and silence. A generation of tycoons owed him their first break, and a generation of enemies owed him their ruin. But at the edge of the grave, his only son, Mason, felt none of that. Just the cold. Mason stood in a black wool coat, collar up, tie crooked. His face was handsome, sharply drawn like a classical statue, but distant, as if carved from something colder than stone. He hadn't cried. He hadn't spoken much, either. Not even when they lowered the coffin. Only after the last shovelful of wet earth thudded down did his godfather approach him, Richard Hanley, an old friend of the family, and one of the few men who'd ever looked Walter Briggs in the eye without flinching. "Walk with me," Hanley said, gently touching Mason's elbow. They strolled through rows of ancient headstones, away from the umbrellas and whispers. Mason said nothing. Hanley, always the diplomat, cleared his throat. "Your father left a complicated legacy. The estate is substantial, but also entangled in matters he never resolved." "Legal matters?" Mason asked, finally. Hanley hesitated. "Not exactly. Moral ones." Mason stopped. His shoes sunk slightly into the mud. "What are you talking about?" Hanley looked at him for a long moment, then pulled a sealed envelope from his coat pocket. The paper was thick, cream-colored. Walter's initials were engraved into the wax seal. "He wrote this 6 weeks ago. For you. Said you should read it alone." Back at the manor, Mason sat in his father's old study, a cavernous room filled with leather, dust, and the stale scent of cigars. He broke the seal, unfolded the letter. The handwriting was his father's. Sharp, slanted. Unapologetic. "Mason. If you're reading this, I'm dead. Spare me the dramatics. I hated them in life and detest them in death. You've inherited everything. The Briggs estate. The shipping empire. The lands in West Texas and the holdings in Dubai. It's all yours. But there is a condition. 37 years ago, I destroyed a man. Not financially. Personally. His name was Elias Monroe. He was my closest friend, and I betrayed him to save my own neck. The scandal ruined him, and to protect the family name, I buried the truth. Elias's family lives a modest life in Oregon. His daughter, Caroline, is the only surviving relative. I set up a trust for her, but I never acknowledged the truth. If you choose to come clean, to restore our name by admitting what I did and compensating her publicly, the board will strip you of the company. The shareholders will revolt. The money will vanish. You can keep everything and say nothing. Or give it all up, for a woman you've never met, for a name most have forgotten. Your choice. I won't be here to judge you. W.B. Mason read the letter twice. Then a third time. He didn't feel the weight of the fortune or the threat of disgrace. Not yet. What he felt, strangely, was something he hadn't in years. He felt lost. The reading of the will took place under gray skies and stiffer collars. The lawyer, a narrow-eyed man with tobacco-stained fingers, cleared his throat too often, as if he were trying to swallow something bitter. Martin sat near the window, arms crossed. No tears now, he'd emptied himself at the graveside, alone, after the rest had left. His father's voice still echoed in the frostbitten hollows of his chest. "We don't leave messes behind, son. We leave legacies." But that legacy had teeth. "And to my son, Martin Elijah Royce, I leave the entirety of my estate," the lawyer intoned, "with the exception of the Eastland vineyard, which will pass to my brother, Franklin Royce, under one condition." There was a rustle. Franklin, sun-leathered and lean in a suit that fit like borrowed skin, didn't react. He already knew. Of course he did. That within 30 days of my death, Martin chooses between retaining his full inheritance or relinquishing all assets and control of Royce Enterprises in exchange for preserving the family name and honor, details of which are outlined in the sealed addendum. Gasps. A flutter from Aunt Rosemary, who clutched her pearls with operatic drama. Martin blinked once. Twice. What the hell does that mean? He asked flatly. The lawyer, with no particular sympathy, slid the envelope toward him. He opened it. Inside, a single-page document, handwritten, dated 6 months before the stroke. The first line was a hammer. Son, if you are reading this, then I am dead, and you have discovered what I did to become a billionaire. Martin's pulse faltered. The letter did not go into poetic remorse or cagey euphemism. It was a confession. Crimes. Bribes. A scandal that, if revealed, would not only destroy Royce Enterprises, but stain every contract, every employee, every investor tied to it. There were names. Names Martin recognized, some still alive. Powerful people. People with reach. At the bottom, scrawled with trembling defiance, if you take the money, the truth dies with me. If you choose honor, the truth lives, but so does danger. Choose wisely. You cannot have both. Martin stood up slowly. The others in the room watched him like he was made of sulfur. Franklin finally spoke. We all knew about it. Your father didn't want to burden you while he was alive. But you're his son. You carry his blood, but now you have to choose if you carry his sins. There it was. 30 days. He could walk out of this room a billionaire, or burn it all down. Is this why Mom left? Martin asked, barely above a whisper. Franklin didn't answer. That was answer enough. Martin left the room without another word, the letter clutched like a hot coal in his fist. Outside, the cold bit harder. But for the first time, Martin wasn't sure if it was the wind, or the truth finally catching up to him. Martin didn't sleep that night. The house was too quiet, and every shadow seemed to carry the weight of the letter. He sat in the study, staring at the fire like it owed him an answer. On the mantel, a photo of his father, back straight, suit flawless, smile faintly smug, watched him. The portrait hadn't aged, but the men inside it had died carrying secrets no empire should be built upon. At 3:17 a.m., he picked up the phone and called an old contact from college. Aaron Vasquez, now an investigative journalist in Portland, and maybe the last person he trusted with the truth. She answered groggily. Martin. It's the middle of the night. I need your help. I think my father committed felonies to build Royce Enterprises. I have proof. But if I expose it, I lose everything. There was a long silence on the other end. Are you drunk? I'm serious. Where are you? Still at the estate. I'll be there by morning. He hung up and poured a drink he didn't want. The scotch burned less than the betrayal. By noon, Aaron arrived, windswept, skeptical, wearing jeans and a leather jacket that said I didn't come to play nice. She greeted him with a wary hug, her eyes already scanning the mansion like a scene from a crime novel. They sat at the kitchen table, the letter between them like a loaded weapon. Jesus, Martin, she muttered after reading it. If even half of this is true, your father could have brought down half the boardrooms in Manhattan. He made me his executor. He knew this would happen. He wanted me to choose. Aaron leaned back, arms crossed. What do you want me to do? Help me vet this. Quietly. If I'm going to ruin my life, I want to be sure I'm doing it for the right reasons. That night, she stayed in the guest room. Martin barely spoke. The silence between them held a history, college, a kiss during finals week, a falling out they never named. Now, she was the only person in the world who knew what he was holding. And she hadn't run. 3 days into their investigation, they found the first real crack. A land deal in Nevada from 1997. On paper, it was a clean purchase. But Aaron cross-checked bank records against a Department of Interior investigation that had quietly fizzled out that same year. They buried a report, she said, pointing to a name, Senator Harold Crane. Martin leaned over her shoulder. My father bribed a sitting senator. Aaron exhaled. It looks that way. And Crane's still on the board of Royce Enterprises. The implications hit like a thunderclap. This wasn't just about honor. It was about power, still active and dangerous. Martin sat down heavily. If I expose this, they'll bury me. Maybe, Aaron said. Or maybe you drag them into the light and see what burns. He looked at her. Why are you helping me? She hesitated, then said quietly, because I think the Martin I knew would never sell his soul. And because, maybe I need to believe someone still chooses truth. Martin didn't expect to see his mother again. But 4 days after Aaron uncovered the Nevada deal, a black town car pulled into the gravel driveway. The driver opened the door, and out stepped Claudia Royce, elegant, poised, and colder than the winter air that followed her. She hadn't set foot in the estate in over 8 years. Martin met her in the foyer, unsure whether to embrace her or brace himself. She wore gray like a weapon, long wool coat, high collar, black leather gloves. Her face was still beautiful, but there was nothing soft left in it. You look tired, she said, stepping inside without a greeting. I am. They sat in the parlor, where the silence was less personal. She declined tea. He declined to pretend things were normal. You knew, he said. Claudia didn't flinch. Of course I knew. He stared at her. Then why didn't you stop him? She exhaled slowly, her gaze flicking to the portrait above the fireplace. You don't stop men like your father. You negotiate terms of survival. Martin leaned forward. He wrote that I could either keep everything and stay quiet, or give it all up to protect the family's honor. But what honor? There's nothing left. That's not true, she said quietly. Honor isn't about pretending dirt is gold. It's about how you clean your hands when no one's watching. Did you ever think about telling me? She looked at him then, something cracking behind her eyes. Every day. But I didn't want you to become like him. Calculating. Ruthless. He wasn't born that way, you know. He chose it. And you stayed. I survived, she snapped, then softened. But you still have a choice. He stood up. It's not just about him anymore. There are people involved, active ones. Aaron found names. Accounts. My father wasn't just corrupt, he built a machine. And it's still running. Claudia nodded once. Then you'll have to dismantle it. Carefully. If you want to live long enough to regret it. That night, Aaron and Martin reviewed everything again. The files. The letter. The risk. We can go public, she said. But the second we do, you'll lose control. You won't just lose the company, you'll become the story. The billionaire who burned his inheritance. They'll crucify you before the truth even surfaces. I know. You sure you want this? He looked at her. It's not about what I want. It's about who I am when this is over. They spent the next week building the case. Quietly. Aaron had contacts. She promised safety, but not certainty. They encrypted the documents. Made copies. Hid backups. And then one night, as the wind screamed outside the study window, Martin got a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end was calm. Low. Familiar. You're digging in graves that were sealed for a reason, the man said. Stop now, or you'll be the next one buried. Click. Martin stared at the phone. I think we just woke up the machine, he said. The next morning, the brakes on Aaron's rental car failed. She had barely made it out of the estate's winding driveway before the warning light flashed, and the pedal sunk to the floor like a stone. She managed to steer into a ditch, bruised but alive. By the time Martin reached her, she was pale and shaking, holding a cracked coffee thermos in one hand and a tire iron in the other. That wasn't an accident, she said before he could ask. Martin didn't argue. He helped her up, his hands tight around her arms, his jaw clenched. They had crossed a line. Back at the house, Aaron iced her leg while Martin called a contact of his own. This time, not a journalist. A former Royce securityman, Langdon, now freelance, with a quiet voice and eyes like a sniper. I need protection, Martin told him. For me and for her. Langdon didn't ask questions. Send me the files. I'll run a trace. But if they're playing dirty, you're already on borrowed time. Days passed in paranoia. Drones buzzed the treetops. Emails vanished. A document Aaron swore she'd saved came back corrupted. Someone was inside their systems, or inside the house. Martin checked the security cameras twice a day. Langdon arrived with a duffel bag and 2 phones he swore weren't traceable. He set up encrypted lines. Burned their backups onto 3 drives. Buried 2 in waterproof bags across the property. They're trying to scare you, Langdon said. But it's more than that. If they thought you'd fold, you'd be dead already. This is theater. Martin laughed bitterly. So what's the next act? A bomb under the bed. Langdon didn't answer. That night, Martin lay awake, Aaron beside him on the couch, headphones in, laptop open. Their bond had shifted. Whatever they once were, friends, maybe more, had been reforged in this crucible of danger and doubt. She looked over at him, eyes glassy with exhaustion. You still think this is worth it? He turned to her. Not yet. But I think it might be when it's over. She nodded, then whispered, then we'd better survive it. 1 week later, they leaked the first document. Not through the press. Through a high-profile, anonymous whistleblower channel that fed directly to international watchdogs. Not even Langdon knew which one. Aaron timed it to drop at 9:01 a.m., peak market chatter, just as the Royce quarterly call was beginning. The effect was instant. Stock halted. Boardroom doors slammed shut. Subpoenas flew like confetti. Martin turned off the TV after the 5th breaking news alert. He looked out the window. For a moment, everything was still. Then Langdon's voice cut in from the hallway. Martin, he said, tense. You need to come see this. In the driveway, a black SUV idled with its engine running. A man in a gray suit stepped out, holding nothing but a thin briefcase and a business card. He handed it to Langdon. No name. Just an address and 3 words printed cleanly on the front. Let's talk soon. Martin took the card. The machine wasn't dead. It had simply changed tactics. Martin stared at the card long after the SUV disappeared down the winding road. Let's talk soon. No name. No threat. Just a quiet nudge, a reminder that they were being watched, not hunted. Not yet. What do we do? Aaron asked from the doorway. We go, Martin said. We go to them. Langdon was less enthused. They're drawing you out. I know, Martin said. But I'm done hiding. They want to talk. Let's talk. The address led them to an office tower in Boston. Floor 48. No plaque on the door. Just a fingerprint scanner and a silent guard with a shaved head. Martin and Aaron were led into a conference room as sterile as a morgue. There, a man already sat waiting. Not old. Not young. Navy suit. Gold watch. He didn't offer a name. I speak for those whose names you'll never say aloud, he said calmly. We've seen the leaks. You made your point. Martin sat. Aaron didn't. We're not finished, Martin said. There's more. Of course there is. You were your father's son. Until now. Martin stared at him. So what do you want? The man folded his hands. We're offering a solution. You keep a percentage, enough to live comfortably, quietly. You release no further documents. You sign a statement disavowing the authenticity of what's been released. And you disappear from public life. And if I say no? The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. Then we bury you in lawsuits. You'll spend the rest of your life defending your own shadow. And if that doesn't work, we do what we did to your father's enemies. The slow way. Aaron stepped forward. You think threats are going to scare us now? They're not threats, the man said. They're timelines. You have until Friday. Martin stood. Tell them I said no. As they left the building, Aaron said, you just painted a target on your back. I know, Martin said. But at least now I know which direction it's coming from. Back at the estate, Langdon was already packing. You need to disappear for a while, he said. Someplace they don't expect. Let the heat die down. Let the truth spread without your face on it. I can't just vanish, Martin argued. That's what they want. Langdon looked at him. No, they want you to submit. Vanishing is survival. Aaron placed a hand on Martin's arm. He's right. You've done what you came to do. The machine's bleeding. Let it collapse. Martin looked out the window. Snow had started to fall. For a long time, he didn't speak. Then, quietly, he said, "One more thing before we go." He returned to the study. Pulled out the last letter his father had written, one he'd kept sealed until now. Inside was a name and an address. Caroline Monroe. The daughter of the men his father had destroyed. The final debt. "I have to see her," Martin said. Aaron looked at him, unsure. "You think she'll even want to talk to you?" "I don't know. But she deserves the truth. All of it. From me." They drove west under falling snow, leaving behind the ruins of an empire and the whispers of boardrooms in panic. Each mile peeled something away: fear, legacy, certainty. Martin had begun this journey as a billionaire's heir. He was ending it as something else. Something almost free. The house was small. White. Weather-worn. A porch swing creaked gently in the Oregon breeze, and a rusted mailbox leaned forward like it had grown tired of standing watch. Caroline Monroe's home wasn't rich, wasn't hidden, but it was intact. Honest. Martin stood at the gate longer than he should have. He'd rehearsed the conversation 100 times on the drive: who he was, what his father had done, what it had cost her family. But now, with her front door only 20 feet away, the words evaporated. Aaron waited in the car. She knew this was something he had to do alone. He knocked. It was Caroline herself who answered. Mid-40s, auburn hair pulled back, eyes like tempered glass, strong but not unkind. "Yes," she asked. "My name is Martin Royce," he said. "My father was." "I know who your father was." A beat. Martin nodded. "Then you probably know what he did to your father. To your family." Her gaze didn't waver. "Not the details. Only that he ruined us. My dad drank himself into the ground after the trial. My mother left. I grew up in rented rooms. I've spent most of my life trying not to hate your last name." Martin swallowed. "I have proof. Documents. A full confession. I leaked part of it already. The rest will come out soon. I don't expect forgiveness. But I came to say I'm sorry. And to offer restitution." Caroline didn't react at first. Then she stepped outside, pulled the door closed behind her. "Restitution," she said. "You mean money?" "I gave up my inheritance. I have access to a fraction now, but it's enough. There's a trust my father built for you, quietly, never disclosed. I want to transfer it fully. In your name. No conditions." Caroline stared at him like she was trying to find the lie in his eyes. Finally, she said, "Why now?" Martin hesitated. "Because I had a choice. And for once, I didn't want to choose comfort. I wanted to choose what was right. Even if it came too late." She nodded slowly. "I don't know if this makes anything right. But I can see it costs you something to be here. That matters." She didn't invite him in. But she didn't close the door either. "I'll think about it," she said. He nodded. "That's all I can ask." As he turned to leave, she called out softly, "Martin." He looked back. I hope it was worth it. He thought of Aaron. Of Langdon. Of the board collapsing in panic. Of the headlines. Of the silence that would follow. The peace, maybe. "It was," he said. "It will be." 2 months later, Royce Enterprises was split, sold, dissected. Senators resigned. Investigations deepened. No one could trace the original leak. Martin lived in a cottage on the coast now. He worked odd consulting jobs under a different name. Some nights he and Aaron shared a drink on the deck, watching the sea bruise into twilight. Other nights, he walked alone, barefoot in the sand, remembering what it felt like to stop running. He had lost billions. He had gained his soul. And every so often, he received a letter from Caroline. Nothing dramatic. Just short notes. Updates on her life. Her new job. The vineyard she'd just purchased, Eastland, as it happened. She said the grapes were stubborn but honest. Much like redemption.